Hey guys, Bhajma here with The Realness with Bhajma. So, coming at you both on Spotify and hopefully this is up on YouTube. If I was able to figure out the technology, it's up on YouTube. Yeah, because like getting this microphone hooked up to the movie recording, it's just so much. I'm doing the best I can. I am doing the best I can here, guys. So, um, let's get started because these allergies are kicking my butt right now, and I promised a podcast tonight. So, we're going to make it happen. Um, yeah. So, let's start with welcome to the Realness with Bajma. And it is brought to you by you guys right now. The show is taking donations at PayPal, which is paypal.com/Bajma. And then also the Cash App, and it's under Bhajma. And Bhajma is B as in Bravo, Hajma. Those don't have any spaces, so helps out a lot, especially right now. We appreciate it. We being me and my spirit guides. Okay, so let's get started. Let's do our breathing, our 3 breaths in and out, 5 counts each. Here we go. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay. See? There it's going. All right. So, today we are talking about expectation, and we're coming at it from the angle of how expectations impact us. And we'll work on how our expectations impact others later. But today, that's what we're talking about is um, how the expectations of others has impacted the choices that we make, both, little things and big things. So, and a lot of it we're unaware of. And a lot of it, the person who has put the expectation upon us is not aware of it. Right? And, oh, there went Dinah. um, you'll be able to recognize it once you do find it. It's not like mysterious necessarily, but it's just not something that we've really been taught to dig into. So that's what we're going to do here. Expectations of others leads to that feeling of judgment, right? If we feel like we've disappointed somebody, we feel like we've been judged and found wanting. So it's interesting to start to evaluate where these unspoken, never addressed, never looked at expectations are coming from, and whether or not we want to be a part of those expectations, whether or not we still want to subscribe, right? And there's a lot of different sources from which we get this sense of expectation and judgment. And I do I want to be clear, I hate expectation. I really do. I work on it within myself. I work on not having expectation. I work on staying open to what's coming up, expecting it to be beautiful, expecting it to blow my mind, and then letting it. And, this isn't constant, but it's getting pretty regular that that's my experience of life. And I don't tolerate expectation. I mean, I do in the sense that I'll get my car registered every year that it's supposed to. Um, I'll follow the rules that need to be followed, right? But I think one of the reasons that I really enjoy being alone is because it doesn't have that sense of expectation on it all the time. You know, because expectation can really drown a person, and you feel it. You know, you feel it in the air in the room with with your significant other. Your kids feel it from you as a parent all the time. And unfortunately, our kids also make up or add to those expectations on their own. So, one of the good things about talking about learning to communicate about our expectations is that they can be corrected. So, for instance, if your kid reveals that they think that they're a failure in your eyes or something along those lines, or anything really, you have the opportunity to correct it because now you're talking about it. And you know, it's the same thing like, oh, I always thought you hated me. Well, no, I don't. I've never even thought about you. You know, among your peers, not speaking with your child, but you know how we do, like, oh, I thought you didn't like me. I thought, no, no, no. And being able to clear up those expectations that are just made up, right? Many of these are just made up that we put upon ourselves. So we're also going to talk about that, the expectations that we put upon ourselves that we might not need to, right? Or we at least want to reevaluate. Right. So here we go. Some of our sources, big one is family, right? So we're dealing with conditioning from generation to generation to generation. And for instance, one of the expectations my family had of me was that I would couple up with somebody and basically be rescued or taken care of by a man. And um, it didn't work out. I might have tormented a couple of men, a few men, but and they gave back. Trust me, it was reciprocated. But it's interesting to consider that one of the reasons my family doesn't accept me is because I didn't follow the rules. I didn't meet that expectation. But that expectation was never even spoken of, right? And then the way that, for instance, with my stepfather, the way that he would communicate would be quick declarations. Like when I was pregnant with my daughter, he said the only thing he had to say about it was, all you women are the same. You get pregnant so you don't have to work anymore. This is what he said to me. That was the only thing that he had to say about my pregnancy. And that's so not me. That's so not who I am. You know, and so he put all of his experience of an understanding of how women are and his negative experiences about women and vomited them all over me, and not even doesn't even bother to get to know me well enough to develop reasonable expectations of me based on who I am, not how women should behave, right? So maybe there's some expectations coming from your family that, you know, the job that you have, the amount of money that you make. You know, some people even have the status symbols like the car and the house simply to impress the parents. Like, look, Dad, I made it, you know, and they're up to their eyeballs in debt. It's just, it's really unfortunate. And that's one of the reasons that I want to discuss it, because we can remedy this. We can talk about this and figure out a better way of being with each other. But also, there's going to be some recognition in here of relationships that are in fact toxic and maybe shouldn't be in your life, and that's hard to deal with. But based on how badly we want peace within ourselves, which accesses our ability to be creative and contribute at our highest level, um, we've got to do that kind of hard work. And it's unfortunate, but it's cleansing and it's necessary, and it's initiation really into, hey, are you really ready to live the life you want? Are you still going to hem haw around and make excuses and whatnot? So, because you can do that too, and that's fine, no judgment. What I have to offer here, I offer for the people that can hear it and that are ready to hear it, and the way that I in particular say it, maybe it lands um, for them. So that's all I'm here to do. If this doesn't apply to you, that's fine as well. Um, Maybe you're not ready to do the work, or maybe there is no work to be done from your perspective. So that's fine too. But when we consider what our parents expected of us, one example I have is that all the expectations that were put upon me as a child made me an excellent boot camp participant. So I go into the military and I'm meeting these expectations, and I'm 18 and I don't even get the chance to consider if any what an expectation is really, and that's unfortunate because I think that this should definitely be in the school system. This type of curriculum of communication and relationship building, which involves expectation management. So, what about our lives? What choices have we made based upon how our family views us, how our family thinks that um, we should behave? And, I thought about this recently because I've done a lot of transformative growth over this past year, and a lot to do with the family realm of things. And just earlier in the year, I remember I posted on Instagram a booty pic, and it was covered. I had my pants on. It wasn't like risque on that level, but it was a nice shot of the ass area. And I ended up taking it down because I kept thinking about, what is my sister, who I never speak to ever, 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 what is she going to think? Or, oh my God, mom's mad at me from this. I know she is because she was so short with me on the phone. This is before um, and maybe she was. I don't know. She never would have said. So, and now here I am talking about it. Like, my concerns for their expectations of me has dissolved. And it's very freeing, and it's part of releasing my creative energy. Um, so, yeah. An example of peers or supervisors, like at work, the expectations of being on time, the expectations of turning in things at a certain time each week, the responsibilities that we're given as an employee. Or perhaps you run your own business, or perhaps you run your home and raise your children. My experience was, of course, the military initially. I had a lot of experiences, but that was that was so I go into the military and work on airplanes, and all my everything I wanted to do was always very tomboyish because I was raised on a ranch. Like, and I have strong hands. I baled hay. I shoveled shit. Like, you know, that just sounds like a fun job to me. It doesn't occur to me that women don't do these kind of things. Well, they do now, but they didn't then. And so I didn't realize the uphill battle that I was in for my entire Air Force career. But it taught me a lot of things, and it made me very resilient. Um, and it broke a lot of my naivete about what people want from you. I don't want to sound cynical when I say that, but it's a sad truth. So, anyways, I had a lot of weird expectations that, like, a man's not necessarily going to relate to, or someone who hasn't had to deal with being one of three females out of 400 guys. Um, and, I was really expected to just not be a source of value. Like, I don't know if anybody is overlooked at their job or whatever, um, but I was expected to not have anything valuable to contribute, which was totally incorrect. I was a good mechanic. I knew what I was talking about. And then these men had different expectations on me based on the time frame that I had been there, and then like showing up 10 times harder every day to prove my value and get a standing within the unit, that kind of thing, get my rank. Um, the the expectations changed depending on the guy, depending on um, his expectations of me, which unfortunately oftentimes they expected to at least, I don't know if they actually expected to get in my pants, but that was really what they ultimately their goal, right? And then when they realize that that's not happening, then they get pissy, and then they get mad at you. It's just the strangest thing. There's some good guys in there, and I have some really good friends from that time, and I had some excellent support people that were men, but they're responding to me as a peer, not as a sexual object, and are able to develop a friendship with me. And, that I highly valued those because it was so rare and it was a safe place for me because nobody was nobody was really concerned about how I felt about any of this stuff. So whatever your work expectations are, look at those and see, that ended up not working for me. After 8 years, I started having all these breakdowns and just miserable, and started having panic attacks at the idea of going in. And I was constantly on the defense there. And when I was getting close to quitting or leaving the military and my unit, my supervisor said to me, he's like, if you had any idea how many complaints we get on you a day, it would blow your mind. And he said, but none of them are valid, so we don't come to you with it. And these guys, it's such a weird phenomenon to me. And unfortunately, it ruined my military career. And I loved working on airplanes. I still dream about it. Um, and that's really unfortunate. And then moving into when I was doing my counseling internships, having to be in an office environment with all women, that because they're counselors and because they're doing the kind of work that they're doing, you assume that they've done the work on themselves too and have the ability to communicate openly and freely. That's my expectation that I had of one of these groups, and it proved to be a huge disappointment because I don't even know that any of them had really done the work on being able to give feedback that helps everybody stay cohesive. I don't know. Anyways, definitely not sustainable for me, because I want everything on the table. Hey, you're treating me differently today. What's up? And let's talk about it. And they would rather go to my supervisor than tell me in the hall as they pass me, hey, can you put on your jacket over that tank top? Really? You're going to go to my supervisor for that? So just silly shit like that. Like, that's intolerable for me. Um, in a work environment. Those kind of expectations that I'm expected to play a certain game or fall in line in a certain way. Um, no, I'm all done doing that. So it was rough for me to get my master's because of that, because of those internships, those mandatory internships. So looking at our work situations and the expectations that are put upon us, are these things that are really sustainable for our own peace of mind? And I know that that's a scary question. I know that we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to look at something like that and go, oh my God, I'm miserable here. Or, oh, look, this is where my dissonance is coming from because this company that I work for produces this ultimately and creates this level of pollution or whatever it may be. And I simply I can't, I can't contribute to something like that anymore. So I'm like, messing with my hair. I can see it in the camera. There we go. My bangs. Still growing out my bangs. So irritating. Yeah. First world problems, right? So, next thing we want to look at is like our social world. And I've always had a problem with that because I put expectations on people that I put on myself. So, like, I used to have a real major problem with people being late. And it was even like that when I was a teenager. Like, to me, it was just the biggest sign of disrespect if someone was late and didn't call or just can't get it together and respect your time by managing their time well. And I'm a lot more flexible in that now. I think that mostly because I have lowered my expectations and I wait and see now more than expect and get disappointed. I let people reveal themselves to me. Um, but as a mother, that really became more of a practical thing because I had my daughter very early, I had her when I was 20. So when I left the military, I started working for Lululemon. So now I'm in this group of young girls where I'm the oldest and I'm only 29 at that point, right? And I have this child, and I'm expected to be able, at the drop of the hat, to leave town to go to this training a couple hours away in Austin. And I say no because my daughter's in school and I'm the only parent around. I'm not going to leave her. And my supervisor at that time needed to call her previous supervisor who had had a daughter and see if I was being unreasonable for this $11 an hour plus commission job that I'm gonna leave my kid and go out of town. So, but those expectations from that particular individual came from, she didn't have children and she was very young and just didn't have perspective. So I had to help with that perspective correcting and expectation management there. I did not go, needless to say. Um, and one thing that really broke my heart when I was younger is my guy friends would ultimately end up wanting me to fall for them, if that makes sense. Or they'd make a move, or they'd do something that made it very clear why they were my friend. And that really shattered my heart, actually, when that happened. Continue to happen. And so my understanding of and belief in nope, not monogamous. That's a whole other story or podcast. Platonic friends. I I have a little bit to say about that, but not here. So, but that is an example of a very high expectation based relationship, platonic friends. Like, have we talked about it? Have we made it clear that this is just friends? And even in that situation, when one person does make it clear, the other person can still hold a torch and hold that expectation that maybe over time, you'll fall for them. So that's unfortunate. And then I had a hard time with women because they're mad at me. I don't know. It's the energy, which is fine. I've always been different. I've always been the outcast. But that has also allowed me to be me, and I'm okay with that. So, um, but like, I'm assumed, I'm expected to be a bitch. I'm expected to be um, nasty, I guess, like unconscious, unaware, and mean. But I'm not those things, at least not anymore. And now I know how to win over anybody, male, like not win over in an inauthentic sense, but like I'm a happy person now, so I give off happy vibes, and if you're matching my vibe, great, and if you're not, that's okay. I'm gonna go on. I just really don't even pay attention to it anymore, which is very freeing. Where was that ability in high school? One of the biggest problems with these expectations that others put on us is that we then add that to our expectations of ourselves. Some of us do. Some of us buck that system. I don't buck that system. That system I try to excel in. Like if you have an expectation of me, I want to try to meet it. And it's an area that I've had to set boundaries with myself because I'll perform to my utmost, and this person, in the end didn't really give two shits about my performance level. So I've had to set some boundaries around trying to make people happy, as far as it may be an approval thing, or a approving, like an approving, like someone approves, and then also a proving of myself. Two separate words. Okay, next idea. Um, so we have this expectation upon ourselves if we accept it, and we may have accepted these things unknowingly. So that's why we're doing this inventory of expectations that others have of us. Do we take it on, or do we always, is our expectation now to fight with this person over their expectation of this because I'm not going to do it? Or for instance, going home to the ranch, I had to have my vehicle be immaculate because the expectation was that it should be immaculate. And if I did make it immaculate, my stepfather would not go near it. If I didn't take the time to clean it like a mad woman, he'd be in it, he'd be driving it somewhere, he'd be fixing something on the inside. Like, the Murphy's Law thing around that. But that was an expectation, and I made myself crazy over it. I bought into it. But I bought into it unknowingly. And as soon as I started to understand that I have choices here, I don't have the added stress of my vehicle needs to be taken care of like it's on the showroom lot. Like, this is insane. Same thing with like furniture and stuff, or anything that we had. It needed to be kept in perfect condition. And I would rather buy furniture that I'm okay with my animals getting on, and I'm okay with it looking lived in and used up, because then I'll get something else that they can do the same thing too, because that's living, right? I'm not here to curate the environment of my material possessions. So that's an example of something that I bought into unknowingly, and then I shifted it. But I can tell you, if I did walk back into the ranch right now, I wouldn't behave like that in their home, because as soon as we go home to family, we start to act like who they expect us to be. And vice versa. We just fall into this pattern, and the pattern is so ingrained, it is so deep, that I don't care what we think we're going to do this time. I'm going home this Christmas and I'm different and I'm going to, especially when we're young, we do this, right? Because we want to prove ourselves to our parents. So now I have my undergraduate degree and I'm going to go home and I'm smart and it just, as soon as you walk in, it's, it's just this immediate reverting back to who you are with them. And you can change that slowly, very slowly over time. I chose to just bail on that situation entirely. Um, but for those of you who cannot bail on the situation entirely, make sure that you're taking on what you can take on and what you want to take on. Those things are important. Um, and that goes into the next thing. Notice that feeling of resentment, guilt, or annoyance with doing things that you do every day, or do for your family, or do for work folks, or whatever, and find its source. So, and this is beyond chores. This is beyond I don't want to take out the trash, and this is beyond taking your sick parent's soup or something. This isn't. There's some things you just got to do, and again, those things those things that I say you got to do are going to be relative to expectations. Just the way it is. Oh, those expectations. So going beyond the little piddly stuff that we've got to do every day, is there something that when you do it, you resent the person you're doing it for, or it's so annoying, or you just absolutely hate the thought of doing that thing, and it brings these unpleasant emotions, and whether you created that expectation on yourself or someone else created that expectation and you bought into it, now what do? You're in this cycle of, hey, I've signed up for this. How do I get out of it? And manage my own guilt and my own whatever else might come with that keeps me from getting out of it in the first place, right? So say that you've done that, you've bought into this and you're in it. What can you do? First, you can communicate with kindness first towards yourself and towards the other that may be involved. Kindness towards yourself for buying into it and didn't know. This isn't something that we go, oh, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I let them. No, we're not going there. We're kind to ourselves. Okay, cool. Now I see this. I now have the opportunity to do something about it. So communicating with yourself kindly, and then when it's time to communicate with others, also doing so kindly and doing so from a space of personal responsibility. And what that looks like is I know that I've been doing this particular thing and I've said it's no problem, but it's actually creating a problem here, and here in areas that I value personally. And I really just, for my peace of mind, I can't continue to do this. And those are your I statements. That's taking personal responsibility for it. It doesn't make the other person defensive. And because as soon as someone gets defensive, conversation's over, right? So we want to keep someone receptive to what we have to say so that we can work through something. As soon as you come in and say, I'm not going to do this anymore, conversation's over. So figure out what the source of it is. Get okay with, taking personal responsibility for the anger that you feel towards it. So like if you're super angry that you're stuck in this expectation cycle, you got to take the personal responsibility for allowing yourself to get into that position in the first place. And when you are able to do that, you get a lot less angry. So taking personal responsibility, I think, is almost fun because it's interesting to me how quickly it shifts the perspective. of here, I'm angry at this person. Well, what did I do to contribute to this situation that has now caused me to be angry? Well, I had expectations, or I was late, or I wasn't listening, or whatever it was. You take the personal responsibility and you bring that into the conversation and the communication in trying to maneuver whatever it is that isn't working for you. So also you want to clarify. Clarifying expectations is huge, and I do it a lot because I don't. Number one, I don't want to wonder if you're happy with the situation, or if I've done something to offend you, or if you're upset with me for something. Like, if you want to be in my life, you've got to get really okay with just saying it. And not many people are. So, but that's how you respect the other person. So, if there's a situation and there's a possibility of this other person to have these common expectations that can occur in these situations. Now, we can say it's not my job to whatever with them, but we also, if we want to have any agency here, we need to accept what is. And what is that everybody is subject to these conditioning situations that create certain expectations. And some of them are very common human responses to different things. So, if, for instance, I'm talking to somebody and I get a vibe of they're interested in me romantically, and that's a hard one because someone who's interested in you is really persistent in their belief that you're meant to be, and or they can be really persistent in the idea that you're meant to be, and that you just need to open up more, or not be scared to love, or there's a lot of them. But I really go into it very quickly with trying to set the expectation of don't have any expectations of me. That's the only way that I can maintain the relationship and keep it open, and trust that you're okay and I'm okay, and that we can continue this relationship as if everyone is okay. Because if you're not okay and you don't tell me you're not okay, that's so selfish. It doesn't give me the opportunity to address the situation, to clarify, or to fix, you know? So get used to giving people feedback in the moment. It may be weird initially, but that's our job, right? Hey, I'm not okay with this right now, or this is exactly the emotion I'm having to this right now. It's being authentic. And then we did talk about the personal responsibility, and I want to bring up again something that is vital to that is vulnerability. And I love Brene Brown. She's all about vulnerability. If you want to know more, go to her. But the vulnerability piece, it's very freeing when you get okay with being vulnerable. And the way to get okay with being vulnerable is to realize that everybody is experiencing what you're experiencing on some level or another. The human experience is pretty standard across the board in these types of things. So whether feeling fear, feeling embarrassment, feeling shame, feeling overwhelmed, feeling, or actually feeling guilt for things you have done, those types of things, that's basic to the human experience. So getting vulnerable to those experiences, it's a little easier when you remember that you're not alone. And as soon as you get vulnerable, that other person has the opportunity to also open up. And when they do, it's beautiful. You start to connect on a totally different level. And the communication then is gold, because you're both communicating from a space of empathy and considering the other in your communication. right? So that vulnerability is super powerful. And when you, if you can grow the balls enough to use it, it's just so powerful. But it takes a lot of nerve. Um, and then it gets fun. So, expectations you have upon and of yourself that are there by default or habit. So, for instance, I grew up. You take a shower right before bed. Like you never get in the bed without having bathed, and that makes sense to me. But when it becomes like mandate in my world, in my head, in my mind, because that's how I was raised. That's how you do it. And there's a lot of things that we're like that about, and we realize it when we see that other families don't necessarily do that. And we're the weirdos. But, or like, taking your shoes off at the door, or never touching the walls because you don't want to smudge fingerprints on the walls. Like that was the thing. I couldn't touch the walls. No slamming cabinets. I'm just now coming out of being like super quiet when Trinity's still asleep in the kitchen in the morning, because I was like afraid to make noise, because in the house I was afraid to. If I got out of bed and went into the kitchen or something, I was going to be in big trouble for whatever reason. So I just, the whole idea of making sound when it's dark out, noise that other people can hear, that was unacceptable to me. It wasn't something that I was allowed to do. And now, now I'm more okay with it. Um, I'm pretty okay with it now, actually. So, and ask yourself these habitual things that you do. Like, for instance, my my skincare regimen. It's always been more high end stuff, and you go through this whole process, and you do it every single time, and blah, blah, blah. And I never questioned that. Instead of going, hey, they've got a moisturizer over here that might do the exact same thing. It might not, but and I believe in most of my skincare, but that's something that it's only recently occurred to me that it doesn't have to be like that. There's plenty of people that don't do skincare, and it's fine. Um, allowing myself to get older that in a natural way. Ooh, that's unheard of. So I am getting older in a natural way, and I'm doing my best to be fine with it. But I still have the skincare there. um, so is that expectation? The next question is: are those expectations working for you? So is that expectation working for me? I think so. I think I look all right for 38. I'm good with it, right? Um, and in that kind of a situation, I'm glad that I did, and instead of wondering, instead of not having taken that kind of care, and then wondering what it would have been like if I would have, you know. But I would also like for that to be something that I just really don't give two shits about. So work in progress, right here, this guy. So are those expectations working for you at this moment? I'm going to say yes. And are they healthy? Is that a healthy expectation? The expectation that I will, do kind of an extensive regimen for my skin for the rest of my life. Well, is that healthy? I think it can be healthy, but it can also be obsessive. So if I'm doing it to fight aging, like I'm not supposed to get old, that's not healthy. It's healthy if I'm simply utilizing resources that help me appreciate, you know, taking good care of skin and having the results of it. That's healthy. So then the next question, I wasn't going to use this example when I wrote these questions, so this is kind of funny. Um, Are those expectations necessary? So, is the expectation of my skincare regimen necessary? No, it's not. So, when it comes down to it, I do sacrifice that when it's time. So yeah, I think that's it. Checking out our expectations that we are recognizing that others have of us and that we then put upon ourselves. And whether or not those are healthy, whether or not there's something that we actively took on or it just kind of fell into our laps and we took it up unknowingly, or there's resentment and annoyance there, looking at the status of these expectations. Like, is this okay? Is this still something that I'm willing to live with? And why? Why is it still okay? Why is it still, you know, it might not be necessary, but you might be able to do something that um, has become an expectation to somebody. So there's expectations a really broad topic. So I'm sure I'll talk plenty more about it. But for now, just identify those and do what you can to shift into a space where you're able to trust your inner guidance system, because your body's going to have emotional reactions to these expectations when you think about them. For instance, um, if I think about expectations from when I was in the military, like I have an emotional response to those expectations. And it's not positive. It's not a good response, meaning I need to get out of that situation. It's toxic. It's not good for me. No matter how much I love the airplanes, I got to go. Same thing with my family. You have to start paying attention to it's right here. I call it your gut brain. Um, that spot, it'll have feeling, it'll have emotion, and that's you can trust that, you can follow that. um, yeah, and then when it's time to work with another over expectations that you feel need to be managed, we're going to start with kind communication with ourselves, um, kind and clear communication with the other, through personal responsibility, through vulnerability. Yeah, and then we start to look at the expectations we have of ourselves. Is it habitual? Is it conditioning? Is it something that we just never really question and it's not necessary in our lives anymore? But hey, maybe it's costing money, or hey, maybe it's taking up some time in your day that you can kind of drop that, and nobody's gonna be mad, kind of thing. So, or somebody might be mad, which is when you have to have the conversation. So the whole idea here, though, is to bring ourselves to a state of peace so that we can perform at our optimum level. And because when we perform at our optimum level, it's service to others. It should be, because it should be aligned with love. So yeah, I'm gonna go before my voice just totally craps out on me. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Again, you can donate at Cash App Bhajma or paypal.com/Bhajma, and find me on Instagram and TikTok. I'm just blossoming there. I am on Twitter, and it's all Bhajma. So I'll see you next time on The Realness with Bhajma.